And welcome back, Illinois in Focus Daily from Chicago for the Democratic National Convention. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network and the Center Square. A couple of things to tackle. Of course, last night was day 3 of the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago. They heard from Oprah. They heard from former President Bill Clinton and also the Democrats' vice presidential choice, Tim Walz. Of course, those were the primetime speeches, but what were some of the conversations that were being had beforehand? That's what we're going to be focusing on here with Illinois in Focus Daily. The Democrats have been having brunches every morning, I should say breakfast every morning, where they have been gathering the party faithful from Illinois, and they have a variety of featured guest speakers. And labor was a major theme yesterday, and encouraging labor to get out the vote. But they had other high-profile speakers as well, including the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who addressed the crowd and talked about some of the things that you may have heard on the convention floor last night if you watched. But here's just one thing in particular that Buttigieg talked about that he says should be very concerning to Democrats, and that deals with what he says is Trump's agenda moving forward if he was to be elected president.
I actually think even now we are underreacting to how significant Project 2025 is. The scandal of Project 2025. And that's the most interesting thing about it to me, that it's a policy scandal. Think about that. The biggest scandal facing the Republican Party right now, the one that they're actually afraid of, the thing that has them cowering and distancing themselves and making up excuses and doing damage control. It's not some criminal cover-up, although they, got one of those going on too. It's not some sex scandal, although it's the simple fact that somebody actually wrote down all of their policies and plans, and it turns out their policies and plans are wildly unpopular, and the American people would rather go the direction we want to lead them when it comes to issues.
So Project 2025 has been a ongoing theme at the Democratic National Convention. Multiple times, several speakers on the convention floor brought out a large book that was printed out to say Project 2025, and they would read certain pages from it dealing with cultural issues and a variety of other things. So that's obviously something that you're going to probably hear even more about in the remaining weeks here of the general election between Kamala Harris and Trump. Clearly, that's an issue. You also heard a lot about reproductive issues and abortion and IVF. So another theme that's pretty consistent throughout. But some of the other key speakers at yesterday's Democrats' breakfast here in Illinois was Raphael Warnock, a U.S. Senator from Georgia. And he geared people up talking about the significance of Georgia having 2 Democratic U.S. senators. But he also discussed how voting is like prayer.
Are you ready to do the work? Are you ready to knock on doors? Are you ready to call your friends? Are you ready to write some checks? Are you ready to make sure that everybody in your family votes, and everybody in your church, and everybody in your temple, and everybody in your mosque votes? We don't want folk around us, talking about, I'm not sure I'm going to vote. We need married folk to vote. And if you're single and he asks for your phone number, tell him you'll write it on the back of his voter registration card, because we don't date people who don't vote. We don't even date people who don't vote, because a vote is a kind of prayer for the world we desire for ourselves and for our children. And our prayers are stronger when we pray together. So let's pray with our hands and our feet. Let's pray with our lips and with our legs. And let's keep this momentum going, because you never know. I never knew when I was running.
So, again, Raphael Warnock addressing the Illinois delegation in Chicago for their breakfast. But labor was a main theme yesterday for the third day of their breakfasts, where they heard from a variety of labor leaders. One in particular, John Daniel, he's a state central committeeman for Illinois' 16th district. He got up and shared his thoughts about how everybody should be able to join a union.
I believe that everyone should have the chance to join a union. I believe that everyone has a chance. Everyone should have a chance to raise their families, to love who they love. The more diverse my union is, the stronger my union is. The more ideas that come to the table when we're negotiating, the stronger the employers are that we work for. It's not complicated. It's real simple. Give people opportunity to grow. Give people opportunity to take care of themselves, to raise their family.
So more of the labor leaders ultimately had their speeches. I think one thing that was talked about was GTS or GST, getting expletive done, GSD. So that was said multiple times throughout. There was even an F-bomb during the speeches yesterday at the Democrats' breakfast here in Illinois. But then they had a moment afterwards to address the press there to take questions. Bob Reiter, he's the Chicago Fed of Labor president, and he took a question where I asked how labor is being impacted by the economy, by high prices, and what are unions hearing from their members in labor? Labor's integral to the economy, no question. You need workers to be in the economy, but how are workers in labor unions talking about the economy with their leadership?
So here, look, we have a number of collective bargaining agreements that have come up for expiration in the last couple of years coming out of the pandemic. And what we do at the bargaining table is we fight for wages that meet the rising costs, the inflationary costs of goods and services, right? So it doesn't exist in a vacuum where we're not also fighting to make sure that our people are getting fair wages. Nationally, you saw it with the auto workers contract bargaining. They got record wages for regular people working in auto plants that was meeting the moment economically. We've got Eric Dean here from the general president of the Iron Workers. I don't know if John Daniel's still here. Our members are always working hard, and we're working hard with them. Our elected officials are helping to do things to make sure that we're protecting their wages, and sometimes that means making sure that the employers who are part of the inflationary process are also meeting the moment and paying our members what they're worth.
So again, you've got the labor leaders there taking some questions about the thoughts and what exactly the union members are feeling with the economy and what are the labor unions doing about it. Eric Dean, he is with the Iron Workers International. He also addressed that question as to what the union members in his union are talking about when it comes to the economic issues.
You asked about what our members are feeling. Our members, we poll our members, we do focus groups. Jobs and economic opportunity were the number one issues for my members, and that was their response. And the opportunity is working under a collective bargaining agreement and being able to afford different things. Because I have a lofty perch in Washington, D.C., I don't believe the president is solely attributable to the rising costs of the war in Ukraine, raised the prices of energy across the world, and the world shutting down for 2 years changed the economic impact of backlog of supplies and different issues of that nature. So we're all affected by that. They're conscious of that. But without a job and a good paying job in a union, that's where my members see the best opportunity. So the last two administrations, we've lobbied for economic security, pension reform, health and welfare, and labor standards. One administration is more responsible for creating those opportunities for our members, and that's why we're fighting for what we're doing.
One of the things that came out yesterday was an adjustment in the number of jobs created in the most recent period where they reveal these numbers. If you're not familiar with this, of course, the national economic trends, everybody watches these. We look at job creation, we look at unemployment, we look at gross domestic product, and look at it in quarters and different types of periods. But the government will put out numbers that are preliminary numbers, and then when they do that, they also go back to the previous period and correct numbers that they had previously reported. Well, we had that happen yesterday, and it looks like there was a major adjustment of 800 plus thousand jobs. So when you have those types of large corrections in the numbers they had previously reported, makes you question as to, well, how strong is the economy really? I mean, we're talking about jobs here. We're talking about labor here, and how exactly that all plays out. But Eric Dean with the Iron Workers International, I also had asked about the sentiment, the political sentiment that union members have. Are they all in favor of Democrats? Because these were union members and union leaders addressing the Illinois delegation, and I'm sure they made the rounds all throughout the different delegations here at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. And Dean said, yeah, they poll their members about politics as well.
We are, and the majority of them self-ID as Democrats. They were for President Biden, and or they looked for another candidate within the Democratic Party. So our leadership followed our membership's mandate. When we endorsed Joe Biden, there was 13 people in the race, and Joe Biden was on the top of the list, and that's why they don't endorse because me, the general president, tells them to do so. I respect my members and what's on their mind, and their polling helps guide us and our leadership team.
So again, they do poll their members and get that sentiment and move forward from there. But unions obviously have a lot of pull, especially in a state like Illinois. Now, not necessarily dealing with the general election, but just to look at how, say, the public school teachers unions impact politics. If you recall, we had this program in Illinois called the Invest in Kids School Choice Scholarship Program. It gave a 75% Illinois income tax credit to private donors who put into a fund, and that fund was used to give private school scholarships to families under a certain income threshold to be able to send their kids to a school of their choice. That was in place since 2017, 2018. Tens of thousands of families impacted by this positively, going to a school of their choice for their children. The teachers' unions were opposed to it, saying that it diverted tax dollars from public schools, despite it being driven by private donations. I had a chance to sit down with Illinois House Speaker Chris Welch and asked him about the future of that program, because the program, it expired at the end of last year, despite efforts and bipartisan efforts to try to reinstate the program. But here's Speaker Welch in what he says is ultimately the future of that program.
You know, investing kids in many places is seen as a voucher program. Here at the Democratic National Convention, vouchers is something that's on the Democratic platform is we're against as Democrats. And that's reflected in our conversations in the State House. The advocates have just not been able to convince 60 Democrats to support the continuation of that program. And that's consistent with what Democrats across America feel.
So again, Democrats not in favor of school vouchers, but he says that the advocates weren't able to convince 60 members of the Democratic caucus of the 78 that there are in the House to join on board. However, if you lump in the 40 Republicans that all signed on to a pledge to support Invest in Kids, and you add that on to the Democrats who had signed on as well, you may have gotten over that threshold. Would it have advanced in the Senate? Not sure, but regardless, that program ended and it never came to fruition. Sean Dwyer, he is a Republican running for the State House in Chicago. He said that a program like Invest in Kids is crucial.
I think education writ large is the key to everything in this city. So by that I mean right now in our Chicago public schools, 65% of our kids cannot read at grade level. 73% cannot do math at grade level. Meanwhile, we're graduating about 85% of our kids. So if 35% can read and we're graduating 85%, 50% of the kids we're graduating are not going to be unemployable. And that ignores the huge chunk that drop out. And we wonder why we have a crime problem in this city. So the CPS is underperforming grossly, and we've got a public safety issue. My thinking, and I don't think it's that sophisticated, is that if we can do a better job educating our kids, that will work toward better public safety and a virtuous cycle where people spend money in their city, grocery stores come back, and life is better for everybody.
And, of course, the Republican candidates looking to make some gains in Chicago, and maybe the Invest in Kids program is just one of the things they talk about, or having school choice altogether. I also connected with Leslie Colasso. She is a Republican running in the Chicago area, and she talked about the importance of school choice, especially when it comes to the idea that some people are concerned in public schools they're being indoctrinated.
School choice is so important, especially with, what some people said here today, indoctrination of the kids. Some parents don't want that, and they should be able to still allow their kids to attend schools and have an option to do that may not be so focused on those things. If you want your child indoctrinated, then fine, put them where you want. The beauty of this is that we all live in a free country, but some kids don't have certain options, and I don't think that's fair. So I think we have to fight on their behalf.
And this will clearly be something else that they continue to talk about as they go into the November fall veto session. But as we heard from Speaker Welch, the advocates for the program haven't advanced it. But you've got to also recognize that there was significant opposition from the teachers' union, as labor and unions were a major theme yesterday for Democrats to get out the vote. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Each and every weekday morning, we are live in Chicago with the Center Square and America's Talking Network. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and get the newsletter each and every weekday morning with thecentersquare.com. Just how exactly are undecideds and independents going to impact the election, and what are Democrats and Republicans doing to try to change some minds out there? Something that obviously at the tail end of the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago is going to be an interesting focus, especially with news yesterday that it's possible Robert Kennedy Jr. Could drop out of the race as an independent candidate and back Donald Trump. That news is starting to splash all over the place. What kind of impact will that have? We'll ask some of the party leaders here on the ground about that a little bit later on today. And we'll also hear with some of the conversations I had with people yesterday of what they feel is attracting some of those undecideds. But yesterday I had a chance to sit down with Illinois House Speaker Chris Welch, and we talked about a variety of things, including that idea of how to attract undecideds to their side. But also I wanted to kind of feel him out for how he feels Chicago is playing a role in national politics, how Illinois is playing a role in national politics.
Yeah, actually, Chicago and Illinois, we are known for making history. Big things happen in our country as part of the American story by going through Chicago. I mean, we've elected Barack Obama, the first black president. We're going to elect Kamala Harris, the first woman to be president. This is big. This is historic. And to know that the road went through Chicago in Illinois is very important.
And he also talked about the history that's made, not just with Barack Obama, but even he himself. He's the first black speaker for the Illinois State House. And he says that's significant. And it also is something that is happening across the country in other states. And he says that's something the Democratic Party has to uphold.
House Speaker Chris Welch, the first black House Speaker in state House history for the state of Illinois. Just if you could compare that to what we're seeing happen here this week in Chicago.
Well, I got to tell you, it's still special. I'm in year 4 now, and it's just as special as it was in year 1. I'm here with 6 other black speakers. There's 4 men, 3 women, 7 in total. We're all first in our state's history, and it's the first time we've all been in one place. Tonight we're going to gather for a demonstration of black excellence in blue and show the rest of the country that there's 7 of us, because if they see it, they can believe it, and if they believe it, they can achieve it too. And so feeling really good about that.
So obviously, there's a lot of history there to be made, and Welch highlighting that. But we also talked about the types of policies to attract undecideds, and what are those policies that Democrats are really pushing for, from economic issues to cultural issues and beyond.
Well, when you think about Chicago and when you think about the state of Illinois in total, the policies that we've passed on the statewide level, I think is the reason why the Democratic National Convention is even here. Illinois, our legislature looks like America. Our state, our population looks like America. The policies we're passing is because of that diversity that we have in our state. And pick a group, any group, their issues are reflected in the things that we're doing here in Illinois. So what better place to demonstrate what our values are as a party than right here in Chicago? And I think we're doing a great job of showing that off.
So Illinois, he says, reflects the United States. He also says the policies that Illinois has advanced being policies that he says will really help drive the Democratic Party across the country. But again, those undecided voters, how do you attract those?
We've, of course, got November just around the corner. A lot of undecideds. A lot of people seeing the past 6-7 weeks trying to make sense of it, right? How do you think voters will approach November, especially those undecideds? What are they looking for?
Well, I think, especially independents and undecideds, those are folks that are waiting to learn all of the facts. They're doing their homework. They're researching the candidates. And I think we're doing a very good job here at the convention. You're going to see it for the next 2 nights of making our case to the American people of why they should choose Vice President Harris and Governor Walz to be the next president and vice president of the United States, because they know that voters are going to do their homework, and we're trying to make it easy for them.
And a lot of the questions of policy, I don't know if people have had that made clear to them. We've heard a lot about abortion. We've heard a lot about Project 2025. We've also heard a lot of condemnation of Republican presidential candidates Donald Trump. For months, you've had even Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker say that Trump is a liar, Trump is a racist, he's a misogynist, and so on. And that's something else we've heard from other Democrats on the stage in Chicago for the convention. I asked Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul about this yesterday, and in particular, if it's fair to criticize somebody who half the country supports based off of policy differences, if it's fair to criticize them, calling them racists and misogynist and a whole bunch of other negative words.
I don't believe that we're characterizing half the country. I am characterizing their candidate, Donald Trump, as a misogynist and a racist. There's a difference. I think he's hijacked the Republican Party. And I have Republicans who are friends. I'm a Democrat. I've been a loyal Democrat for years, but I've worked with Republicans, but not Republicans like Donald Trump. I think I know plenty of Republicans who are for Kamala Harris because their party has been hijacked. So I don't think anybody up here is characterizing every Republican in the nation. There are Republican union members. Nobody up here is characterizing those individuals as misogynists and racist. But this is a race primarily between 2 candidates. And that individual, unquestionably, I'm speaking for myself, I'm characterizing him as a misogynist and racist based on the words that came directly out of his mouth.
And earlier in the week, I was able to connect with a Republican State House candidate, Frederick Walz, and he shared some of the thoughts and how he's approaching people in his community as a black man in Chicago, how he addresses those thoughts from people on the streets, his neighbors, when they say, "Oh, Trump's a racist." How does he react to that? Here's Frederick Walz.
Well, a lot of you have some older people that that may say, "Well, he's racist," and I say, "Well, just prove it," and then they can't prove it. So then I educate them on Donald Trump. I say, "Well, do you personally know him, and what has he personally done to you?" And they can't say anything. I said, so all you know about him is what the media have showed you. So then I showed them media clips of like when for instance, when Jesse Jackson was running for president, he helped Jesse Jackson out. You know what I'm saying? He was never what the media is portraying him to be. And so, they have their different opinions, but you just have to educate them. And then I educate them on just being a conservative, a Republican. The Republican Party was founded to abolish slavery. Everything about the Republican Party was helping black people. In fact, Lyndon Johnson takes credit for the Civil Rights Act, but the Republican Party was in Congress. They had a two-thirds vote to push through a Democrat Senate filibuster. So it was actually the Republicans were always looking out for the black community, but a lot of people are just not educated. The only reason that black people really vote for the Democrats is because when Kennedy was in jail, someone in his family called King's wife, and when they got him out of jail, that was the Mickey in the drink. That was the Kool-Aid.
But there's also other issues about especially Republicans trying to break through in Chicago, a very deep blue city in a deep blue state. Walz says that they just got to get that message out.
We're just not being afraid to come out and talk. If you have the truth, you don't have to be afraid. And you just can't be afraid of people trying to out-talk you, like, interrupting you and things. You just have to be patient and then just explain the facts. If people don't accept the facts, then you just have to move on. It's just kind of like the gospel. Christ said, if they don't accept what you're saying, dust your shoes off and push on. You know what I'm saying? And that's really what it is. They just have to come out. Also, someone high up in the state need to donate to campaigns like mine, that because we need, the Democrat candidates have a lot of funding. If we had the funding, or at least 10% of their funding, we could do some advertisement and it would help get our name out. Because a lot of people, last year in 2022 I ran, and I was knocking on doors where they had already mailed in their ballot because they didn't know didn't know me. But I can only reach so many houses walking door to door. So that's the biggest thing, the biggest way that the Republican Party can help is donate to the candidates running.
So again, Frederick Walz, he's a Republican running for the state house in the Chicago area. Now, yesterday I was able to talk with some Democratic delegates from across the country. One in particular, Daniel Hernandez, a former state representative and political actor in Arizona. He talked about, the excitements that they're seeing in this race.
I've only ever seen this kind of excitement once, and that was for Barack Obama. So it is not quite the same, because I actually think this is more excitement than even Obama had. Having been in Arizona when I started my, political career, it's incredible how much has changed in just the last few weeks. And I think the palpable sense of excitement that we're getting, not just from Democrats, but from Republicans and independents.
And he also talked how Arizona used to be a Republican state, but Biden won narrowly, and their Democratic governor won narrowly, and he sees that as a long march of progress in Arizona.
But in the last couple of years, because Democrats have been able to lay out a vision that's better for Arizonans, we've won the governorship, the Secretary of State's office, the Attorney General's office, and we had 2 Democratic senators. Now we have 1.5 Democratic senators because we have an independent senator in Senator Sinema. But Democrats have figured out the way that we win in Arizona, and I think the way that we win nationally, is not just by playing to Democrats, it's by talking to folks about the real problems and the solutions that we're able to offer. Meanwhile, we've seen in the Donald Trump camp and the MAGA camp that people focus on personalities and attacks. That's not how we win in Arizona. And people are sick and tired of that politics of, going after each other instead of actually talking about what we can do to improve people's lives. I think the other thing that's really important is economy right now is a critical thing in Arizona. I'm no longer a legislator, but I work in advocacy and I talk to people all the time. Costs of groceries, cost of gas, they are exploding. And what is happening is Donald Trump goes and talks about how Kamala is crazy, her laugh is to this, goes after her and does personal attacks. Even when he's supposed to be talking about the economy, he pivots and talks about what he's comfortable with, which is personal attacks. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is laying out her vision for what we can do to improve the economy, to lower costs for housing, trying to restore the child tax credit, which will bring millions of kids out of poverty. So we're working on policies and solutions. Donald Trump is laying out an alternate vision, which is one that's focused on how big his crowd sizes are.
So again, hearing from Democrats from across the country, but another Republican who's running for the state house in Chicago, Terry Lee, I connected with him earlier this week as well, and he talked about how Republicans can attract others to see, the Republican side of things.
You really have to go in and like talk to the people, the minorities, because I feel like there is a long grip of the Democrat rule on Chicago ever since the 1930s, and that's why our population is lower than it was in 1920. So you really have to go out there and really go into the message, the policy. But the thing is, like, a lot of people, the curriculum, it really becomes like a deep-rooted kind of like brainwashed through like generations and generations. So it's really something that it's not going to happen overnight, but you have to go at it for like years and years to like make sure that it starts to resonate throughout. And Chicago is a very blue city, but if we could tilt the city a little bit to the right, we could like move the state into the right direction.
We'll see just how successful those efforts will be as we continue to monitor this all throughout here with Illinois in Focus Daily. And the Center Square, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. It is the final day of the Democratic National Convention, and we, of course, are going to see the Vice President, Kamala Harris, accept the nomination with a keynote speech tonight, and then that's going to wrap things up as we head into the home stretch for the general election. But I think one thing that's going to be interesting as well is exactly how are the announcements coming from the RFK Jr. campaign going to impact this race if indeed he does decide to step out and, as is being reported, back the Republican in this. So we'll see if we can get some reaction from some of the Democratic leaders here on the ground as that's being reported. All right, have a wonderful day. We'll be back here tomorrow morning with Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network each and every weekday morning with the Center Square.